sunflower bracelet today for you. The sunflower bracelet was designed by Anna at our headquarters location, and it uses 2-hole sunflower beads as well as some tiles. So I'm going to be using the Checkmate tiles as well as the sunflower beads. If you need any of the materials to do this sunflower bracelet, below the video in the published date stamp, which says when the video was published, there's a little show more button or a down arrow in that box. You can click on that and we'll give you links to these products online. So these 2-hole sunflowers are what we're going to be using. Here's the opaque yellow color. You're going to need approximately 8 to 10 of them depending on your wrist size. I'll be using the hematite color with the gold on it and kind of making it pop a little bit with that. In addition to those flowers, you are going to need the tiles. The check tiles that you'll be using are 4 per each of your sunflower beads. For this bracelet in particular, like I said, you're going to need about 10, so anywhere from 32 to 40 of those tiles. In addition to the sunflower beads, those 2-hole flowers, as well as the tiles, you're going to be using some 11-0 seed beads as well as 15-0 seed beads. In her version, Anna did the whole thing with 11-0s. I'm going to pop another little bead in there, and I'm going to use some of the Miyuki drops. And these are the Picasso drops that I'll be using to kind of make it look a little bit darker along the sides. So along the corners here are the sides. I'm going to be popping out that drop. In addition to the teardrop, again, there's the 11s and the 15s. Here's that cedar or that hawthorn color. I'm going to be using a Toho brand seed bead 11-0 in the Permafinish Polarized Matte Galvanized Purple color. That's going to lay on top of this fun tile color, which is the Metallic Sun, which is almost a green, like a really light grass green. So I'm going to be putting those on top, the flowers on top of that green color, with the purple going around the sides and kind of making the color pop. In addition to that, to bring out the gold a little bit more, I have 15-0s in the galvanized champagne color. And it doesn't matter which brand you use for this bracelet because you're just using those as actual spacers and sizes. The whole thing is going to be strung on some wildfire beading thread, and I'm using 0.006 in the gray color since most of my beads have that grayer tone. I could also use the green color with this same color palette. I have beading needles here, and I'm going to be working with 2 needles. These are size 12 English beading needles, and again, we're going to need 2 of them. Because I like to work with the wildfire thread and the needles, I always have handy next to me a cord cutter or a thread zapper to cut the cord and get it off the spool and burn down the knots along the end. Because it does make a little bit of a blunt end wherever you actually burn it, I have my needle nose pliers, and these are wide jaws, to squeeze down on the end of the thread. Doesn't matter which pliers you use, anything that is nice and smooth in the inside. It's going to make it much easier for you to thread those needles, especially when you're using a size 12 needle. I do have a clasp here, and this is one of the Clasp Garden Ball and Crystal clasps. That is a push clasp that I'll be using at the very end of the project. To get started, I want to get 5 feet of beading thread with a needle on either end of that 5 feet thread. We're going to start actually with the clasp and work our way up doing the base of the bracelet. Once the base of the bracelet is finished, we're going to come back and decorate the top along here with our sunflowers and add in to the design. As you're getting ready to get started, the one thing that I forgot to mention was the wire guards. I like to use wire guards if I can with the clasps in order to make sure that there is thread not touching on the actual clasp itself. So if you can have some wire guards handy or wire guards, thread protectors, French wire, any of those options will be great in order for you to not have the thread being kind of moved around. So you can see right away I poured out the teardrops, and there was one that was kind of thin and little. I go ahead and just move that off to the side. Don't use that bead. The first thing I'm going to do is take one of these wire guards, and I'm going to put it onto my needle. We're going to put one needle through the left side of the wire guard and one through the right side of the wire guard. And those will both come down then onto the base of the thread. You want to make sure you have about equal amounts on either side of the thread. The wire guard works to just stop the thread right there in the middle, and it has a little U shape or almost a horseshoe shape. From there, I'm going to put on my clasp, running the needle through one side of the clasp. That clasp then will hang out right inside that horseshoe. We'll go ahead and reinforce the clasp as we come back down the bracelet after adding in this baseline. So to do the baseline, you can see that it is a collection of 5 beads of 11 O's on either space, separating out the 4 tiles. I'm going to be using 5 at the start, and then we're going to use 4 on the sides with our teardrop, and then we'll connect with our middle beads. To get started, coming out of the wire guard, I am going to separate the threads, and I'm going to add on each needle 2 of my 11 O's. From here, I'm going to work on the outer edge of the project, picking up one of my tiles with my right needle, putting on 2 11s, a drop, and then 2 more 11s, and then 1 more tile, and letting that drop down next to the clasp. Same thing on the other side. After adding our 2 teardrops on the outside of the wire guard, we're going to add our tile, 2 11s, 1 drop, 2 11s, and let those drop down next to the clasp. Add on your last tile, because remember they come in groups of 4, and we'll get ready now to actually make it into a shape. So I'm dropping those down right next to the clasp, and I'm going to crisscross the threads. We're going to add 5 beads here on my right needle. And those are the 11 O's. I don't even have the 15 or the flowers cut yet. So there's 5 going on from right to left, and I'm going to crisscross the needle through those seed beads going from left to right. So these 5 seed beads have 2 strands of thread going through, coming out on each side. This again is the outer strand of the project. These tiles are going to get folded in, and we're going to go along the inner strand as well, kind of reinforcing before we move on. To move on here, what we're going to do is add 5 more seed beads. So we've got our 5 beads on, again on the right needle going out the left side, and then on the left needle going out the right side. And that's going to get us our first connection point. From here, we're going to repeat the pattern just like we did kind of down here on the side. It's going to be our tile on the right needle, 2 11s, a drop, 2 11s, and a tile. What happens on the right needle also happens on the left. So picking up the left needle, if you're not great using both hands at once, you're going to repeat that pattern. Again, a tile, 2 11s, drop, and then 2 more 11s. If you don't like the look of the drop, you're just going to add an extra seed bead in there in that place. After that, you add your next tile, and while I have this needle in my hand, I'm going to pick up my 5 seed beads, drop those down, pick up the other needle that was sitting down, and cross through those 5 seed beads. Give a nice tight pull. And once you have that nice tight pull, that's your second grouping of your beads. So it looks like they're really far out right now, because they are, because we are going to be actually turning them in and having them smaller along the center to put our flower on top of. But for now, you're just going to concentrate on doing that outer row. And again, to step up to that outer row to complete the pattern, you're just going to repeat the cross through. So you have your 5 seed beads on. Take your other side of your needle and cross through there as well. Once you're crisscrossed through, on goes your next grouping of your tiles. Again, depending on length, if you need more of a 6.5, you'll probably end up doing about 8 of these. If you need more of a size 7, you'll do 9. If you need a little bit bigger, you might do 10. So you're going to continue doing these groupings of these 4 tiles along the base here of the bracelet. And then once we're done along the base of the bracelet, we will come back and we will do the center, linking them together and adding in our 15-0s and our flower. When you get through with adding that first line of your beads, you're going to get ready to add the clasp or the closure on the other side. So I have my wire guard handy, and coming out of the last beads, I have on my thread 2 11-0 seed beads on either side. The reason I have those, and instead of crisscrossing, is because I'm going to mimic what I did at the start. I'm going to put on my wire guard on through the left needle, slide on the other portion of the clasp through that loop, take the thread and needle, then go through the clasp, that same one that I have in my hand, and down the other side of the wire guard. Now you're going to repeat reinforcing on the other side. So you're going to go up through the wire guard on the side that the thread is coming out of. So you're going up through the wire guard. Again, it's that little horseshoe shape. If you're doing a cup button or a different type of clasp, you would also be doing that in the same fashion, putting that on, going through it, crisscrossing through opposite directions. And what that's going to do is get the needle from one side to the other side. So at this point here, I have a needle going through the wire guard coming from the right and coming from the left. And I'm going to do a nice tight pull to make sure I don't have any extra thread exposed along it. From here then we're going to get ready. So I'm going to get ready with my flowers and my 15-0s laid out, and we're going to come back down the bracelet, folding in the 2-hole tiles as well as decorating them with our sunflowers. So after coming down through the 11-0s, what you do to kind of pull it in tight is I took the needle through the 11-0, through the tile, and then we reverse the thread through the tile. So I'll just kind of repeat it here on this side. I got excited and did both sides. So the one side you can see we went through the 11-0, through the tile, and then back to the thread so it's coming in the opposite direction. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I went through the 2 11s, through the tile, and then back the needle and thread through that same tile bead. On the inside now, we're going to catch onto all of these tiles, bending them inward, which is also going to pop those teardrops off to the side. In Anna's design, she did not use 11-0s between the tiles, but I'm going to drop 11-0s between the tiles. So take your needle, pick up, or I'm sorry, an 11-0 or 15-0. Take that needle, right or left, put in a 15-0, and take the next needle and cross through that same 15-0. So we're just crisscrossing. As we crisscross, it'll pull in. The thread that's on the right hand side, I'm going through the tile that's on the right through that inner hole, adding a 15 and going through the second hole of the tile that's going to sit further down. Add a 15-0 on and then pick up your left needle. So again, we're going to go through that first tile, add a 15 to sit between the tile, and then that 15-0 that I put on with my right needle, with the left, I'm going to crisscross through it. Give a tight pull, and that gets our first little diamond shape. And you can see as you pop those teardrops kind of off to the side, or if you just use an 11-0, give a nice tight pull. Each thread is coming out then of that 15-0 seed bead. From here, what we're going to do is actually add our flower now before we move on to do the next one. The flower is going to sit right on top of the bead. With the thread and needle coming out of either side of the 15-0, the one thread is going to go through one hole of the 2-holed flower. The other thread is going to go through the other side. To get there, take your thread and needle on the right, add in 2 seed beads, and then take the flower, making sure that it's facing up, going down through that right-hand hole. Now, the thread that's on the left, same thing, 2 beads go on. So we're basically making a V. And then we're going to take that thread and needle through the other side, the other hole. Give a nice tight yank. And you can see that it sits right there in that V. On the other side then, we are going to add 2 seed beads on the right needle. Sew through that bottom 15-0 from the right hand side over to the left. On the left then, same deal, 2 seed beads, and we're going to sew through that 15 going towards the right. So that threaded needle then starts at that 15 and it's going to end at the 15. And once we end and we have that flower sitting right on top, you can see it's nice and raised. It has the V on the one side and the V on the other side. To get from one to the other, we're going to decorate the sides here by taking the thread and needle on the right hand side. I'm going to go up through those 2 seed beads on the right. After I come up through the 2 seed beads on the right, I'm going to also come up the 2 seed beads on the left. From here, we are going to add 11 of our 15-0s on either side of the needle. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, what I'm going to do is add a teardrop in. So I wasn't planning on doing this, but just hit me the spur of the moment. So I have 4 seed beads on. I'm going to add a 5th, and then a drop, and then 5 more. That needle then that's on the right is going to go down through those 2 beads on the right hand side and down through the 15-0 below it. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I like that teardrop effect. It kind of just hit me. I had 2 teardrops sitting there. So if you want to do that effect, you can follow me and the random thing that I just decided to do. Or you can follow Anna's design and just throw in an extra 15-0 there. So again, I'm coming up the side. We're going to do 5 of our 15s. If you want to do the whole thing in 11s, you're going to do 8 11s. Again, 11 or 12 of the 15s. In my case, I'm using 10 of the 15s and 1 teardrop. Again, over here on this side with the left side, going down through those 2 beads at that V. It's going to decorate the side of the flower, and then crisscross through the 15 below. As I crisscross through the 15 below, I'm going to give a nice tight pull. That will pull that flower up just a little tiny bit, make sure that those teardrops sit nice and in place. And now we're going to go from our first one to our second. The needle that's on the left-hand side, go through the bottom or the left-hand hole of the tile below it. From here then, I'm going to go through the top hole or the outer hole of that same tile bead and come out. So just like we reverse thread on the bottom, we're reversing thread on the top. Needle that's on the right hand side, go through that same inner hole of the tile on the left, and then back through the outer hole on the tile. It's going to see a little bit of thread there on the inside. You'll never notice it. Here when I'm going through, I'm going to take the needle on the right and go towards the left. Needle that's on the left, go towards the right. So we're crisscrossing back through that grouping of 5 seed beads. What that's also going to do is reinforce that baseline that we created. As you do that, if you want to, so you don't see the extra thread, I'm going to add a little 15-0 on the sides. So here along the middle, because the tiles are going to be up, I'm going to add 3 15-0s on both the right and the left before going into my next set of my 5 seed beads. That's going to put just a little bit of gold picot trim right in the middle there. On the opposite side, again, 3 15s, and going back through those 5 beads in the opposite direction. And this is the fun thing that I get to do when I get to check out Anna's designs and kind of take them apart and figure out how she did them and pick them apart, is I get to add and make little changes. So you can see here's keeping it nice and simple, and here is giving a little bit more to the design. So simple versus adding in those extra teardrops and adding in the little picot trim. From here, I'm going to continue on doing the same thing. So the inner thread, the thread on the right there is going to go through the first tile, then back through the tile going from the inner hole to what is the outer hole, which will get turned in. On the left-hand side, same deal, going through that tile, and then come on to the inside. On the inside, the first thing we're going to do is add our 15-0, cross our thread through, and then go up and grab on the extra thread, or the extra tiles here at the top, crisscrossing through before adding in our next flower. So if you need to, you can actually slow this video down in your settings. You can rewind to get back to adding the flower, and you're going to continue going the whole length of the bracelet, adding in your little flower, as well as the designs that sit on top. When you finish adding the last flower to the top of your bracelet, you're coming out the last 15-0 right there that's crisscrossed. What you're going to do is continue like normal, down through the tile on the right hand side, up through the second hole of the tile, just as if I was proceeding to add more onto the bracelet. And instead what I'm doing right now is reinforcing the clasp, going through the seed beads, up through the wire guard, through the clasp, making sure the thread stays on the guard, down the guard on the other side, through the seed beads, through the tile there, through the outer, so you're just kind of backtracking. I'm going to go through the bottom hole of that same tile, and then I'm going to tie off the extra thread right there, right at that seaming portion. So to tie off the threads then, once they're back in the same place, and they're going to tie off there rather nicely because they're going to hide underneath that cup. I'm just doing right over left and then left over right, tying the 2 thread ends together. If you want to, you could have retraced the steps one more time to reinforce the clasp again. And after I have 3 knots in here, I'm going to grab the thread burners, burn down the edges of the thread, leaving a little bit like 1/8 of an inch there. You can see I'm going to burn those edges then down against the project and towards the back so they just kind of fall in line. At that point then, your bracelet is completed and finished. And the fun thing with this bracelet, like I said, you can really change up what you are making. So you can change up if you want to use flower cups on the top or something else. You're just going to go in with that same V shape, even if you're going honestly to something that is 1 hole. The 2 hole is going to sit much better. The 1 hole is going to be difficult to keep the seed beads around the side, but any bead really will work on the top. The fun idea of this also would work with super duos and would work with iris duos. So you can play around with the type of bead, the 2-hole bead that's going to be your base that you're working with. Again, if you need any of the materials for this sunflower bracelet, you can go back to the beginning of the video where I list off the materials that are used, or you can go below the video to that date stamp. There's that show more button. Click on that and it'll give you links to the different products online. Also keep in mind always that you can slow down this video, watch it on repeat, as well as in your settings, like I said, slow that down. Also, a little tip, if you want to, you can actually subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that way you'll get regular updates when we do different designs, product updates, give you new ideas and new information. You can also visit me on Facebook and Instagram and check out PotomacBeads.com. Shop from us online there. We'd be happy to ship out products along with all the inspiration that we provide for you guys. You can also join us in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. Post, share, interact with the group of people that really love to make jewelry, love to share inspiration, get ideas, and kind of continue growing as a beader. As always, thank you so much for watching and have fun making Anna's sunflower bracelet.